Hey everyone, I wanted to go over the new and exciting news that we got for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, which is now available on both the Nintendo Switch and on PC. And originally when I set out to do this video, I was actually just simply going to cover a developer interview where we got a bunch of quotes from the art director for Sunbreak, Yoshitaka Ohushi, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, where he discusses how they wanted to present Sunbreak and how it is that basically Capcom told them to essentially make the game for a Western audience. Some interesting quotes in that interview, which I'm going to be covering a little bit later into the video, but for right now, I want to discuss the fact that one of the questions that he was asked gives us a rather insightful look as to how Capcom is approaching the free title updates post-launch DLC. Remember that on August we will be getting the first batch of DLC, and there's 4 of them in total that we know of, with the understanding that there could be more coming down the road for 2023. So this was actually the last question they asked them in the interview. Again, we're going to go over the other questions a little bit later, but first and foremost, the question is, do you have any final comments for the fans? Again, this was the last question in the interview. His response was, when I first joined the team and heard what the director Suzuki-san wanted to do, I was like, wait, are they trying to make a completely new game in terms of content, themes, and work of volume? The development team was being prepared for something that I didn't feel was a mere quote-unquote expansion. I feel like we have been able to give form to that sentiment somehow. And this is the important part. We're also hard at work for the free title updates for after the release of the game. And I can assure you that we're not making any compromises here either. In parentheses, although sometimes I wish the director would cut us a bit more slack. He's referring to director Suzuki. The Monster Hunter series has a long history and each game carries a lot of emotions for fans and devs alike. We hope we can provide such memorable experiences in the future while adding even more surprises and excitement. So what I found extremely fascinating here is that they're mentioning directly that the free title updates are going to be bigger than probably what we have seen in the past, as they're making, and I quote, no compromises. This both being in the art direction, which was he was being directly interviewed for as talking about the art direction for the game, but also in the grand scheme of things, as he mentioned before then, when he mentioned in the terms of content, themes, and work volume, as in the development team was being put to task for making what Capcom has been touting as a massive expansion. Now, a lot of people have taken account to that or have not necessarily agreed with the wording that it's a massive expansion, since they basically just added 4 new monsters, a couple of such species which are not technically new monsters and all of that. But we can all agree that Sunbreak has been pretty good for the most part. I don't think there's a lot of negatives to it, because they just basically directly address most of the issues that people had with base Monster Hunter Rise. And now they're basically saying that going into the future with the free title updates, that is not going to let off. They're not just going to take monsters that we had previously believed to just be, copied and pasted over from Monster Hunter World or even Generations Ultimate, and then just bring them over to Rise and or Sunbreak and call it a day. That does not seem to be what they are trying to do, and we have a direct quote from that. So I certainly want to hear your guys' opinions on this. Are you expecting there to be a lot more than what we have been shown already? Obviously there will be, but just how much more? We know that after the free title updates for Monster Hunter Rise, the 2 ones that included monsters, both 2.0 and 3.0, we basically got nothing after that. So we now know at the very least they're going to double that output heading into Sunbreak. We are getting 4 free title updates that we know of, with the potential of a 5th one later on, presumably if the game continues to sell well. They haven't necessarily said that, but in other Japanese interviews they've kind of suggested it, which is why I'm saying it now. When it comes to the actual rest of the interview, I'm going to leave a link in the description below for you guys to check it out for yourselves if you so desire. There's a couple of questions that I'm not necessarily going to go over because I don't think they necessarily add all that much, and they're more about the presentation of how they went about showcasing the game pre-launch. So it's not necessarily all that interesting. There's a couple of ones that I do want to address. The first question was, which visual elements would you like fans to get most excited about? His response was, we spent a lot of time on the 3 Lords, the main feature of Sunbreak. We wanted to make a Western style monsters convincing as the actual living creatures, complete with an interesting ecology, a proper relationship with the world that they live in, and the hunters who face them. It involved a lot of trial and error. We also included as many story elements and tricks as we could tie to Elgato's characters and the setting to the Citadel and to the story. Similar to Rise, Sunbreak contains plenty of Easter eggs and little surprises, so we hope you enjoy exploring the game and finding many details hidden around the environments. And this is something that we've already kind of gone over in the past when discussing specifically just how much emphasis they put on the three lords themselves, for basically there being just 4 new monsters with the final boss being included. The 3 main monsters that they focus on, the 3 lords, are story heavy, and is something that they definitely double down and triple down as you're progressing through the story. They kept making them as like, oh wait, something is coming, oh wait, another one is coming, another big thing is about to happen. It was one of those things that they just kept really relying on the fact that these 3 monsters in the Citadel are extremely important, and almost every other monster at the end of the day wasn't necessarily a threat. By the time that the elder dragons and stuff kind of show up, they don't really make a big deal that there's a Teostra roaming about, or a Crishaldo Aura, or anything like that, a Chameleos. They don't really pay that much attention to them, because it's like Malzeno, he's the biggest threat, you need to worry about him, which I found a little bit funny. And ultimately it turns out that Malzeno wasn't even the biggest threat in the game, which of course it wasn't gonna be, but they certainly drove it up to be that bigger thing that it was supposed to be. The other question that I also wanted to highlight was, what kind of visual concept and themes did you have for this game? Was there anything you paid a particular attention to? His response was, when I joined the game, concept of monster hunters from Western folklore had already been established, so I added some elements of horror, Western beauty, the elegant design. For instance, the horror element, I tried to create an eerie atmosphere for the new locale in this game, the Citadel, by making the sky crimson red at night. You can find lots of visual cues like this throughout the game. I paid a particular attention to creating a setting from the point of view of Monster Hunter series. Rise had a very specific theme, but it still felt like a convincing world in the Monster Hunter series due to the design and setting. Because of this, I paid careful attention to creating a sense of novelty and specificity for Sunbreak based on the settings created for Rise. Of course, if you lean too hard in a particular direction, the balance between these 2 settings will be lost, so that was an important element to keep in mind as well. So I did find it quite humorous that he's basically taking full-on credit for making the Crimson Red Knight in the Citadel kind of like his own thing. But I mean, if you're a creator and you make something and you certainly want people to know that you made it, that is one way to go about letting the world know that that is something you suggested and it came about. So certainly huge shout out for that. And if anything, I think it makes the Citadel stand out as one of the bigger, more interesting maps. This is something that I covered in another video a while back, where I spoke about just the aesthetics of the game, not necessarily just how big the map is. This is something that I covered in one of my most recent videos, but just the aesthetics of the Citadel and how interesting it is when in comparison to other maps that we haven't necessarily had in the past when it comes to the rather infamous Monster Hunter series. But that's about all the details that I wanted to go over in this video. Again, I set out to do a developer interview video, but then it turned out to be that the last quote in the actual interview was probably the more interesting thing than the rest of the interview, which I found extremely funny, but interesting nonetheless, and I hope you guys found it informational as well. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.